welcome to the Lasso The Moon Podcast. I'm Bryce McCracken.
I'm Colleen McGovern.
I'm black and white Willem Dafoe.
That's actually, I like that one more than your first one. This is our second time recording this intro because I forgot to hit record the first time.
No, you didn't. It was me, Bryce.
Let
me
Colleen.
take the fall.
Colleen, if anything, because we were pretty upset about losing what we did have, Colleen did then proceed during the recording to slam an iPad.
Oh, did I? I forgot we're not supposed to touch the table. I'm sorry.
Colleen's back, guys.
I'm back.
Welcome, Colleen. Once again, we can't have Wyatt with us. He's 10 feet away, just on the other side of my bedroom wall, but he's been out of town in Ithaca, New York. So he couldn't see this movie with us. I'm sure he will, but we couldn't work out the schedule. So we got Colleen back, and we're very happy to have them.
I'm very happy to be here. I love Wyatt's shout-outs, and I look forward to hearing them again. And I love being the fill-in. The end.
On this day, I learned that Ithaca is in New York and not New Jersey.
Huge
Can we
for
fact
the
check
Brett
that?
community.
It doesn't need to
No.
be fact-checked.
Let's just make sure. Do we have our best people on it?
Yes.
Can we confirm?
I've been to Ithaca. It's in New York. So I auditioned there. That was one of my schools.
Did you get in?
Yeah, I did.
It's a good school.
It's a great school.
My high school choir teacher went there.
So did mine. That's why
Wild.
I auditioned. She drove me to it. It was crazy. Anyway.
So we're still working to confirm the location of Ithaca.
We're not, and we are moving on. Today we will be talking about the film Asteroid City. This is Wes Anderson's newest movie. This is a movie that I know I can say I've been really looking forward to. I'm sure you two were as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably my most anticipated so far this year.
Well, yeah, both of you have been reviewing and watching chronologically Wes Anderson's movies.
That was just me.
One of
that
us
was
yeah.
okay. Well, we were joining Bryce along for that journey.
On a few stops.
On a few stops. I only saw like 2. Wait, actually, you saw Fantastic Mr. Fox before we did, right? And then
Yeah,
we
I
just
had
saw it
already
again?
seen that movie a few times.
Well, I saw it for the first time. Anyway, yes, I was very excited for this as well.
Yeah. Big day.
Do you
Big
two
day.
have much relationship with Wes Anderson?
We dated a little bit in college, but we were just at different places in
Didn't
our
go
lives.
anywhere.
Yeah. No, I really like Wes Anderson, but I don't have the same I don't have the same historic relationship that I know at least Bryce has. Like I haven't seen all of his movies. You have, specifically. And I've seen probably half of his movies at this point, but I really wish that I would have seen Grand Budapest Hotel.
This is his 11th film.
Oh my god.
Before I had seen this, I wish I would have seen Grand Budapest Hotel.
You haven't seen Grand Budapest Hotel?
No, I've
Even
been meaning
I've
to.
seen Grand Budapest Hotel. Damn.
I know. Well, I don't know about even. You've seen a lot of movies I haven't seen.
That's kind of true.
We complete each other.
They do. It's very cute.
But the Wes Anderson movies that I have seen, more or less, I have really thoroughly loved and have stuck with me for one reason or another. Usually being his, iconic aesthetics and kind of MO that he puts on his films. I love Wes Anderson, so I was really excited for the new release.
Before Colleen mentions their relationship with Wes, I don't want to mislead anyone. I do not have a historic relationship with Wes Anderson. I had seen Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think I watched that in 2020, and that was the first Wes Anderson movie I had seen. It was a pretty glaring hole in my film catalog.
I'm so sorry.
Also, worth noting, Brett is a little sicky boy. He's got a bad cough, so we'll see how much of that makes it in the final cut of this podcast.
You guys remember when MJ played with the flu in the NBA Finals?
This is about
in
to
the
be your
90s?
flu pod.
I can't stop thinking about it. When I was playing softball the other day, I was thinking
Oh
about
my
that.
God.
I was thinking about that shot of MJ, hands on his
Unbelievable.
knees, about to throw up. That was me hacking up a lung in right field.
And it was the same thing. It was the
hitting
same
a nice little
thing.
pop right over the shortstop.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, my relationship with Wes Anderson, I always knew, because I had only seen one of his movies and I knew what his movies were and how they were presented. I always knew I was going to really like him, but I think I was just waiting for an opportunity to dive in head first. And that opportunity had not presented itself until this year with Asteroid City coming out. I didn't get a chance to see French Dispatch, and I think that was largely because I had not seen any other Wes Anderson movies, so it wasn't at the forefront of like what I was looking for. So over the last 12 months, especially over the last 6 months, I've been binging all of Wes Anderson's movies. So I've now seen all 10 of them, now 11, I guess, after today. And just like Brett, these movies are all excellent in my opinion. I've ranked all of them on my Letterboxd if you want to follow me there. But even his worst movies, I still think are incredible. Like the floor for Wes Anderson is so small for me, or rather so high.
Yeah.
That my expectations going into this movie were pretty astronomical. And I'll get into whether or not I feel like this lived up to them. But this is a director who I love very much, and I wish I had found him sooner, because a lot of his sensibilities that I'll talk about really connect with me. And his style, of course, really connects with just about anyone. So, yeah, I like him a lot.
My connection is very much through the people who adore him. So my best friend from college, well, I have a couple, but the one who doesn't live in this city, Marina, she's not going to listen to this, but shout out Marina. She is obsessed with aesthetics. So again, like you, it makes sense that this is something that she'd be obsessed with. And she's like, what do you mean you haven't seen Grand Budapest Hotel? So that was my first like introduction to it. And obviously I was captivated because it's very colorful. Yes. And I'm a very colorful person, so it definitely appealed to my sensibilities. But past that, my boss, Josh, shout out Josh, he might listen to this, but he's like, I gotta watch the movie first. He's obsessed with Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
He so since working for the I've watched
name drop.
Sorry.
I'll bleep it.
Oh, thanks. Since working for the family I nanny for, I've watched triple the amount of Wes Anderson movies than I had previous to working for them. So his favorite is Rushmore, and he keeps being like, oh, so you'll watch Moonrise Kingdom, but you won't watch Rushmore. Okay. Because he's a little baby. So but he's like a pretty big influence as far as like, hey, Josh, I saw this Wes Anderson movie, and then we'll talk about it. It's pretty, that's my connection to it. So I'm pretty excited. I will say, the French Dispatch was probably like, that felt like a movie that I saw outside of anybody having a relationship to Wes Anderson. Like that, I saw that movie and I was like, this feels like a me movie. I'm keeping this close to my heart. And that's the anecdote that I have. The end.
Do you like French Dispatch that much?
I did.
Interesting.
I know it's not a lot of people's favorite, but I really liked that. I know it's not the movie we're talking. Oh, poor guy. I know it's not the movie we're talking about. I really did like it. It had like enough variety that it kept my attention with the aesthetics, and I was like, and it was like tying back to a tribute, and I love a tribute.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. French Dispatch, which I truly do think is like, I don't think it is his floor, but I think it's near his floor. I think that movie's relatively flawed, which I can't say for the vast majority of his movies.
Yes.
And even that, like I had not seen it, and we watched it a week or so ago, and I loved it.
Yes.
So again, like, was very excited for this movie, and it was very clear the populace as a whole this was the first. So we went to our local theater, the Manor, over in Squirrel Hill. It's our local like indie theater, and it was the first time I've seen a sold out crowd since Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Movies, baby, movies.
It made me very happy to see. I think they were also showing Spider-Verse around the same time.
Yes.
And we walked in, and it was just absolutely packed. We even got there 20 minutes before showtime and barely got in the theater in time to.
Well, you guys missed it because I went in first while you guys were in line for concessions to go get a seat for all of us. There was a line to get into the auditorium when it hadn't opened yet. So I got in line early to go get that, which I had actually, like, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, never.
Well, actually, not never. Like, I don't know.
Not since we were kids.
I was gonna say not. It feels like never because
Yeah.
now that I think about it, I definitely experienced that as a kid.
I definitely waited in line for High School Musical 3.
I still haven't seen High School Musical 3. I didn't go to the movies as a kid, but I'm sure you guys are right. Go ahead. Sorry.
That was pretty much it. Like it's the landscape has changed so
Yeah.
much that it truly felt like that is an experience that I've ever had. But it's like that and waiting outside the GameStop.
Oh
for,
my
like, the
god.
new Call of Duty. That was an experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen anymore.
It speaks to how popular Wes Anderson is, both amongst, I don't want to say like normie crowd, but like
Yes.
people know his name.
Yes.
Like if you ask most people to name a few directors, a lot of them would be able to say Wes Anderson's name. And he's also very, very popular amongst film fans like ourselves. And I mean, like you could see with how many people were there today. I think it's often the case with anytime anything becomes mega popular that people kind of revolt against that. And with the inception of AI and how hyper specific Wes Anderson's style is, there have been a lot of Wes Anderson recreations. It was even a trend on TikTok to shoot random things like they were a Wes Anderson film. And that was a trend that I enjoyed a lot, but the result of that was a lot of people feeling like Wes Anderson was so hyper-specific that he's not necessarily all that creative because maybe this is the only thing that he can do, which I don't think is necessarily true. I think there's a lot of variety within his style. He makes movies the way that he wants to, and he can tell a unique story within that.
Yes.
So at least for myself, I have not really been participating in any of the Wes Anderson backlash, and maybe it's because I've gotten on the train so late, but I truly think like he is one of the best working directors that we have right now.
Yes.
Ironically, the second Anderson that is in the top 5 working directors right now, Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, him.
Unrelated.
Yeah. Unrelated.
Yeah, I think Wes is a brilliant director. I love, I mean, his style is so obvious. You could have a baby identify a Wes Anderson movie because it's so specific.
A dumb baby.
A dumb, stupid baby could identify it.
It's me. I'm the baby.
It's Brett.
Like
for the viewers at home who are watching, I'm like,
he is pointing and pretending to be a baby.
he's a dumb baby.
Wes
Anderson also writes. Wes Anderson also writes and directs all of his own movies, and I love his writing style. I really, really connect with his sort of like, if there's a lot of character to his set pieces, there's not a lot of, not to say there's not a lot of character, but there's not a lot of like expressionism in a lot of his characters. Most of them are pretty like mundane or monotone, which is something as a boring motherfucker like myself I can really relate to. And that comes up a lot in this movie, and we'll talk more about how he kind of plays with that when we get into the spoilers, but that is something that I really connect with, and I really think it's on display here.
I think somebody I was talking to who really, really likes film, it couldn't have been you because this is not, and this doesn't feel like a Bryce opinion. Somebody was like, yeah, Wes Anderson feels like what film buffs should like people who like Wes Anderson think they like good movies. And I think that's such a horrible take because, and I think the only people who would, and not to bash anybody, but like, I think the type of people who would hold that opinion, want to feel like the way they see things is more special.
Yes.
And I can empathize with that, but at the same time, the fact that Wes Anderson can make something accessible while still making it as artful as he does is really impressive. Yeah. And I've always, so even if it is like the layman's film buff stuff, like even if it is like what we me, amateur, like wants to believe is like the height of film, so what? That's how I feel about
that. Doesn't matter. If you connect with it, you connect with it.
If you connect with it, you with it. And this was no exception. As far as like what he was able to accomplish in his style.
Yeah.
Very, very consistent with his style, I thought. The end.
It almost feels like he's saying, after all of the recent criticism of him only doing his own thing, that he just kind of was like, fuck you, I'm going to go even harder.
Yeah.
And so this isn't like the most Wes Anderson-y movie of all time, which is funny that can even be an adjective at this point, but every single one of his classic Wes Anderson things are on display here. And he really did not hold back, and I respect that because he has to be aware of the criticism that he has been getting. And at the end of the day, I feel like he doesn't really care.
Wes Anderson is a Taurus. I just wanted to say that.
Good to know.
Yep. Earth sign. Stubborn.
I'm sure some
Fixed.
of our listeners will appreciate that information.
Sorry if you don't.
Well, we all know that Tauruses are aesthetically pleasing directors by trade.
Every Taurus.
I mean, I've been saying that for years. So.
Wyatt's a Taurus. The end.
Yeah, well, he made all those movies back in the day. They were all very aesthetically pleasing. We all remember.
We
That's
all
true.
remember.
I had something else to say, and I forgot.
I think it's worth noting while you remember that. So this movie had was it $25 or $35 million budget? I have it written down because I knew I would forget. Only $25 million budget, which for this cast list is actually minuscule.
Pretty crazy.
That's crazy.
Everybody wants to work with this guy.
When you look at the set pieces, maybe it's not that surprising, but this cast list alone could warrant a $65 million budget.
Yes.
But I think you're exactly right, Brett. Like, people will work for him for free because it's everything I've ever heard about working for him is like he is such a genuinely good human being and he's such a creative person and he's just a pleasure to work for. So it's not even uncommon for Wes Anderson movies, but this movie in particular, you'll have A-list actors that are showing up to give 60 seconds worth of screen time or dialogue. Like Margot Robbie is in this movie for maybe 45 seconds.
Man.
And she's one of the biggest actors that we have working right now. And so it speaks to what he is able to do. And he's one of the few directors I think working right now outside of maybe Quentin Tarantino that sort of walks the line of the film buffs love him and appreciate him in one sense over here, but then they also make a lot of money and the casual people that just go to a few movies a year are also able to appreciate them a lot.
It's Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Everybody
funny.
signed a contract to make minimum wage so they could play with Tom Brady, and then they won a Super Bowl. So
Unbelievable.
Let's talk about what this movie actually is because we haven't done that yet. Do either of you feel like you have a big enough grasp on what the plot is? Because if not, I feel I can do that.
No, you should do that.
Okay, so I'll give my best short synopsis here. A family recently, off the back of losing the mother of the household, is traveling to the grandparents, so that's the father-in-law of the father, played by Jason Schwartzman, who's in nearly every single Wes Anderson movie. It's his son, who's a genius, and his 3 daughters. And they make a stop along the way at Asteroid City, which is the location in the middle of the desert in Arizona, correct?
Arizona.
Colleen's birthplace, where an asteroid hit 5,000 years ago, and that's all this town has going for them.
Classic Arizona.
Classic Arizona. They are having this
man.
yearly convention to honor the landing of this asteroid. It's like a science fair. A lot of people are in town. They're giving out a scholarship, and the son of Jason Schwartzman is this genius, and he is in contention for this scholarship. None of this really has anything to do with what is actually happening in this movie. It's kind of just the set piece to get the characters in the same space. So what this movie is really about is just the events and the interactions that all of these characters, both from this tiny little town in Arizona and all of the people traveling there, have when they end up there on this week. And a bunch of stuff happens. They end up stuck there for a while. But ultimately, this movie is really just about the. Ironically, Brett made a joke, or was it Colleen? One of you was like, "What if the real Asteroid City was the friends we made along the way?" A joke that is always funny. Is ironically actually like kind of the point of this movie.
That's what I said.
Yeah, there's no real plot here.
Yes.
Even most of the characters are not that fleshed out. This movie is really just about like being in this environment and watching the interactions that these characters have with each other.
And also, to be clear, there's levels to this because pretty much everything that Bryce just said is a fictional it's a fictional theatrical telling that we are seeing a cinematic form of, if that makes any sense. So it is theater that we are watching as if it is happening in real time. No audience is being seen. Then we also get to see bits and pieces of the creating of that theatrical play, as well of backstage and like off stage conversations about the play, as well as Bryan Cranston hosting a television show
about
the creating of the play. So
three layers.
And these are not things that like pop in as bits here and there. They are like there are entire scenes dedicated to just those, to those different settings sewn throughout the movie. So, and this is something that I want to talk about later too. Is like it sounds incredibly complicated and tiresome. Like I would watch all of that and feel like I just ran a marathon, which is how I feel about some other Wes Anderson content, i.e. French Dispatch is very much like that for me. But this is a very palatable version of a movie like The French Dispatch, where like all of the themes that we see and these different kind of like wacky plot devices to, that Wes Anderson uses for his expression, it all kind of makes sense. And it's easy to go down.
It's very intentional the way he does it as well. That's like something of note, is that like these different worlds that we're seeing are very much designed to be easy. I thought one of my takeaways was that like as we're seeing these worlds, they're designed in a way to show difference. They're designed to take us along the journey of what each one feels like, and there's enough difference scattered in them where even if we're not consciously being like even if we're not conscious, we're like obviously consciously aware that something has changed, but like there are so many subtle things in the design of the different worlds where we're easily able to follow, which I feel like you can't say that about all Wes Anderson, like you said about French Dispatch, but for this one, the design of that felt very, very intentional, and it was easier to follow along because of that.
I actually think I disagree, but we'll have to save that for the spoiler.
Oh my god.
I guess maybe we can get into it now because it's not really a spoiler for this movie. My overall thoughts before we get into the spoilers here are, I think this movie is awesome. I had an excellent time. Would not be surprised if it ends up being one of my favorite movies of this year. But I had, if I left with one complaint, I don't know if I liked the structure. I found it a little bit convoluted and unnecessary. Whereas with The French Dispatch, which is told in a similar way, in that it is essentially like the actual story is the narration of the story that we're seeing. So with The French Dispatch, it is this newspaper publication, and the movie that we're watching is the stories within that newspaper. And the production of this newspaper is more of like a unique framework to narrate the story rather than just having a standard narration or voiceover. In this, at least on first watch, I found that it could be a little bit confusing, even a lot of bit confusing at certain points, because they're not always on the same timeline. which I would have been okay with. In fact, I probably would have really liked that.
Yes.
Had I not left the theater wondering, what did I actually gain from having the story told this way? I found in the moment, especially, every time I got pulled out of Asteroid City and was watching the production of this play or Bryan Cranston's, frankly, really good exposition. While all of that was fine, I still found myself just being like, can I get back to the story? Like, I was getting invested in these characters and what was happening to them, and I just wanted to live with them a little bit more.
Yes.
I felt like a lot of the things that the external exposition and the external framework of the story were giving me were things that I could have just had I been given more time with the characters.
Yes.
Who knows? Maybe I think my opinion might change with the second watch. I think that I'll save some of this for our final thoughts because I have a little bit more to say about this. But yeah, I found it personally just a little bit convoluted and confusing, and it took away from my enjoyment of the movie a little bit.
Yes. I don't know if this is a spoilers conversation, but definitely I think we're saying the same thing, and I would love to get into that. But I genuinely agree. I thought the same thing. I was like, it feels like this also might be a final thoughts thing. It felt like he was trying to get us to ask a question, and for lack of a better way to say it, I didn't appreciate that. I was like, you don't even know what you're trying to get me to ask, and what you are trying to get me to ask is something that you've already asked. Like it's like I felt a little spoon-fed, but I also found it convoluted. I think that's a good word for it.
I wanted to say real quick before we move on that I felt like I might have been benefited by having watched The French Dispatch a week prior and being really upset at how much I wasn't following and understanding. So the second I sat down, because I knew that something similar was going to happen, I felt it. From the moment that the opening credits started, I was like, I am hearing and like understanding every single line of dialogue from this point on so that I can know exactly what's happening. And I feel like they actually do lay it out really, like in Bryan Cranston's opening monologue. I will say, for anyone who is listening and hasn't seen it yet, like pay attention, listen to it, and like really lock in, and try to consciously like understand what's happening, or else you may find yourself getting really, really lost. Like they will help you if you pay the attention that it needs to have.
Yes.
But again, I don't expect everybody. I think that like that convoluted quality is going to have an effect on a lot of people because they're not going to walk in and have that same mindset as soon as they sit down. Like you just can't expect that of everybody. I would have done the exact same thing if I didn't have that negative experience with a different Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
Do you think
that's valid?
Jamie Marvel, Mr. Guy off the street who goes to the theater twice a year to watch a Marvel movie. Do you think if he walks into this theater because a friend invites him, do you think he's able to connect with this? This isn't like a setup or anything. I guess I'm trying to get at like, is the average moviegoer going to enjoy this as much as the three of us did?
I would think probably not.
Yeah.
And I almost hate being the person that says that because it makes me feel snobby and pretentious. I really don't.
Well, I think I agree.
I don't want to feel that way, and it is not like pedestaling in any sense. It is just that like there was a time in my life when I saw movies like this before I was a avid movie watcher that I was like, I hated that. It was stupid. It was stupid, and I don't understand, so I hate it. And then, I would go back years later and watch those kinds of movies and be like, oh my God, I love this movie. I didn't understand it the first time. I didn't know how to like consume it. And so in the grand scheme of Wes Anderson movies, maybe I should have put that disclaimer on earlier when I said that it's palatable. it's palatable in like the Wes Anderson verse.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
But
that's a great way to put it.
But I would say that somebody just walking on the street who doesn't watch movies all the time is going to have like a hard time with it and probably isn't going to like it. Like it's going to hurt the reviews.
Yeah. I think having a hard time with it is a really, really good way to put it as far as like the Jimmy Marvel's experience of this movie because it's gorgeous and I feel like there's obvious technical successes when it comes to this movie, and I think all of that is really enjoyable. I found that incredibly enjoyable, the most enjoyable part. As far as like the experience as a whole, I think it misses the mark a little bit. So I think that would be hard for Jimmy Marvel to to like experience.
Fortunately for our listeners, if anyone is listening to this who has not seen the movie yet, I think most of the people that listen to our podcast are fellow movie fans and likely have some relationship with Wes Anderson already. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like if you have a relationship with Wes Anderson and you like a lot of his sensibilities, I think you'll probably really like this movie. At the very least, I think you'll probably enjoy it.
At the end of the day, I don't think that... Sorry, I hope I'm not stepping your toes here by interjecting this.
Nope.
Grand scheme of things, movies, cinema, they're an art form and an expression of oneself. So I don't think that our opinions of the movies should ever be defined by how easy to watch they are by just anybody who picks up and watches them. There's a million other qualities that we can and should point to as whether it's good or not. So
I think the only reason why I'm ever even moderately concerned with that is because otherwise movies don't get made if those people can't walk in and enjoy the movie. Hopefully, I mean, we saw this movie too early to really have any box office statistics.
Yes.
But $25 million will not be hard to make back, I think. Wes Anderson has had a history of making a lot more than that. I mean, Grand Budapest made over $100 million, like very quickly. And this movie in particular, I don't remember exactly what the record was. It got a limited release, but it set some record for like most amount earned per theater or something like that, because it sold out like every single theater in its limited release.
It released in 6 theaters. It made $800,000.
Yeah, like that's obscene.
That is
for
obscene.
6 theaters.
Yes. Yeah. And I forgot. I think you're right, and I don't remember the statistic either, but I remember reading that, and that's a lot of money.
Yes. So at the end of the day, it's like I don't really give a shit if Jimmy Marvel doesn't like this movie, but I want this movie to make money, and unfortunately, Jimmy Marvel and all of his homies are the ones who are gonna keep the movie business going. Yes. So.
Jimmy Marvel is clutching his fist. he's face down on the pillow, tear soaking. Listen to this.
My bad, Jimmy.
He was so excited to listen to this. He's catching straight.
Oh my god.
Every direction.
Do you two have anything else you want to say before we get into spoilers? There's a lot going on here, and maybe not a lot at all. So I don't even.
I have one thing.
I might have 4 minutes to say about this movie. I might have 3 hours.
No,
I don't really know.
I don't know about you guys. I had an incredibly difficult time writing notes, and I told Colleen when I went out to check on them earlier, I was like, I'm just winging it basically.
Yeah.
Like I
respect
not
that.
write things down.
Yeah.
Sorry, had something.
Go ahead, baby. You're my colleague in movies right now. I didn't call you baby. Go ahead.
I loved the screenplay of the movie.
Yes.
Everybody should know that, like, from a writing perspective, it is really, really strong. One of the main, like, pretty much the only thing that I found myself being able to write down, because it's just kept, like, recurring in my mind, is that I need this to be a book. And I need to read it over and over again. I would love it as a book. So I was really pleased to find out that you can purchase for pre-order the screenplay.
Oh, that rocks.
That
so
does
I
rock.
bought it already.
Nice.
It won't be here until
I'm high-fiving Brett.
August. But
that's cool.
I'm really excited to get that because, like, my version of
Get your
rewatching
little
this.
paws on it.
My version of rewatching this is going to be reading the screenplay, and I can't wait.
I feel like I need to rewatch it as well. That's really funny. That's on par with me buying a UV nail set kit. Like that's on par with like what we spend, the things we spend money on. That's a really good idea.
I have a history of this. I played disc golf for the first time last week and bought a set like by the time I got home.
He was
the
like-
same thing with tennis.
Yeah, I bought a tennis racket like immediately.
Oh my god! You know what? I get it. The first time I went skiing with Brett, I bought a pair of skis after.
That's true.
I
meant
feel
for
like
each other.
We're just
we're meant for each
impassioned
other.
homies on the Lasso The Moon podcast. I know Wyatt is the same way.
We should all look up at, Bryce took this test recently, high sensation seeking. Anybody who doesn't know what that is, look it up. Take the
that's a
test.
self-test.
See if you're a high sensation seeker. Me and Bryce are high sensation
Real
seeker.
fucking right.
So anyway, the thought that I had about this was that I already said the colors were nice. I also had a hard time writing notes. And a hard time, like, I already have a hard time putting my thoughts into words, but putting my thoughts into, like, what do I, like, the affect that this had on me, or, like, the affect that this movie had in general was kind of hard to put into words. And that, I think that's all. I think that's all I can't put into words.
I mean, so many of Wes Anderson's movies are so experiential in that the main goal of the movie is for you to just enjoy it.
Yes.
And enjoy the experience of being in front of the screen watching the movie.
I have thoughts about that later.
Which is I guess a little bit surprising for me in terms of my own sensibilities, in that a lot of the enjoyment that I get out of movies is having a lot to analyze, which is not to say that there's nothing in this movie or in any of Wes Anderson's movies to analyze, but it's not the point.
Yes.
Which often my favorite movies, that is kind of the point.
I vibe with that so
yeah.
bad.
So like with this movie, I really do enjoy the experience. Like both of you, I definitely plan on rewatching this.
Yes.
I wrote in my final thoughts notes, this movie, and again, I'll save it for the spoiler content so people actually have a reason to keep listening, but for reasons I'll get into, I genuinely think this movie has the potential to be like one of my favorite movies I've ever seen.
Wow.
But I think my issues with the framework of the story and how the story is being told to me kind of step on those toes a little bit and make it a little bit difficult for me to actually get to that point. So I definitely want to come back to it when the time is right. I'll probably see it again this week, if I'm being honest. I have enough friends that want to see it. Wyatt still has to see it. So who knows? I'll probably see it again.
My other note, Jeffrey Wright, he was the guy who played General Gibson. He also played the narrator in The French Dispatch, and that made me love the movie.
He's also Commissioner Gordon in Batman.
God, I know he's Commissioner Gordon in Batman. He's such a... I
He's
love
a
him.
Brilliant actor.
Anytime he's on screen, I feel safe. And
he has
I feel
such an
like...
exceptional speaking voice.
I know! God, sorry to yell. Sorry.
that'll clip.
1000% clip
love
the microphone.
him.
I don't know how he was like completely out of my orbit until Batman.
Till the Batman.
God.
I was like, this guy rocks.
Yeah, he's
I love
great.
seeing him in everything.
Yeah, I saw him in Westworld, and that's so.
yes.
I was like, God, you can do anything you want.
His role in The French Dispatch especially is like exceptional.
God.
And that's the last thing that I really want to talk about here before we get into spoilers. And I am glad to see we've talked pre-spoilers for almost 40 minutes here. Because I genuinely don't know how much I'm going to have to say after the spoilers. The performances here are all exceptional. I mean, I do want to take a second to just, this is, if you haven't seen it already, which I'm sure most of you have, but just as a reminder, this genuinely has probably the best cast I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Stacked as shit.
I don't
dude.
think that's an exaggeration, even a little bit.
Which
No.
I think only Wes Anderson could do this because these A-list actors and actresses are not demanding a lot of money.
No.
Because it's a privilege to be able to work with Wes Anderson. So Jason Schwartzman is sort of the lead here, which I don't think you can call him an A-list actor, but he's in nearly every Wes Anderson movie, and he truly is a great actor. Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton. Skipping over a few here because they're lesser names. Maya Hawke, Steve Park, Liv Schreiber, Sophia Lillis, who's growing on me a lot, and then a bunch of cameos from Margot Robbie and a bunch of other people.
Oh,
It's
God,
too warm
Adrian
for me to
Brody.
think right now.
I
Adrian
mean,
Brody.
God. So good.
Did you say Hong Chow?
Yes, Hong
Girl
Chow's
Hong
in
Chow's
here.
Yes, he is.
This cast is exceptional, and
Oh, fucking Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum plays, I think, maybe my favorite cameo in this movie.
That was so-
But I do want to especially shout out Jason Schwartzman and
Mhm.
Scarlett Johansson. They're sort of the two like emotional leads of this movie. This movie certainly does not have like a conventional male-female lead, but
Mhm.
I think they probably have the vast majority of the screen time, and I think that they are both exceptional at doing this sort of like understated, monotone emotion that Wes Anderson sort of demands in a lot of his movies. And they're also both really funny. This whole
Mhm.
movie is frankly pretty hilarious.
Yes.
Which I don't know has been the case for a lot of Wes Anderson movies recently. His movies used to be a lot funnier, and I think recently he's kind of leaned more towards just being like amusing,
Yes.
which has not necessarily been a bad thing, but I mean, like, if you watch Bottle Rocket, his first movie, and frankly, his next three movies, they're all hilarious.
Yeah.
It may have just been a result of watching this in a packed theater where everyone else was clearly a Wes Anderson fan, but God, this movie was hilarious.
I love it.
It was really
I
good.
know it's like our whole thing is going to movies. And like everybody knows that. I don't have to say that we love going to movies. Going to a packed movie, there's nothing like going to a packed movie.
Truly.
It's so sick.
Especially
That's what we
like,
say.
it's especially rare for me as an adult person who can go to movies without my parents to
No, you can't. Don't lie to the audience.
purely speaking in terms of like the timeline here and sort of the evolution of movies, it is so rare that I get to go to a packed movie that is not a superhero movie.
God,
Yeah,
that is
that's
so
true. Which-
real.
It can add to the enjoyment of a superhero movie.
Yes.
But
Spider-Man.
it's really cool to be able to experience that same environment for a freaking art house movie.
I know.
A movie that has you're not connected with any of these characters, you don't know any of this lore. You're just here because you like the art from the artist that is producing this content. And so it's really cool.
Did I
Go
dream
to the
this?
movies.
Did I dream this, or did we have to show our IDs to get into a movie recently? You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, anytime we go to AMC in the waterfront, we have to show our IDs if it's
Yeah.
after
Oh,
like
that's
9
true,
p.m.
'cause they
right,
have
there's a time.
There's a
thing.
curfew.
There's a
It has nothing to do
curfew.
with AMC or that theater. It's
Like
just
the PG-13
all of
or
the
whatever.
waterfront has a curfew after like 9 p.m.
It's because in classic, like, outer, not that, you know, we live in the suburbs, but not that the waterfront is the suburb, but like, shit kids be hanging around at strip malls, you know? And that's our version of the strip mall.
Yes.
That's it.
They've destroyed the Monroeville Mall and now they're
Oh
just
my
going
God.
to
Now
AMC.
they're just going to hanging out in the waterfront.
You have to respect it.
Alrighty, let's get into spoilers. We've talked for how long? 43 minutes without spoilers. I like that a lot. If you have not seen Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, it is in theaters right now. Go ahead, check it out. That would be awesome. Support your local theater. If you have already seen the movie, or you don't give a shit and just want to listen to us talk, we appreciate that a lot. Go ahead, keep listening. Thank you very much.
I hope there are people who listen, even like having no relation to the movie, that just want to hear us talk as like background noise.
I do appreciate that.
I mean, I think you're a psychopath if you do that, but like,
You said that on the last podcast, too, believe it or not.
did I really?
Yep.
God, I love you psychopaths. Please keep it up. You keep me going. You keep me doing this.
Like that audio that's like, to all my lovely girl fans, I see you. I can't remember the rest. Sorry.
That's the like verbal equivalent of being like, oh, I gotta show you this picture on my phone, and you take 20 minutes to find it.
That is my whole personality. The amount of times I've had that happen to me is frankly just embarrassing, and I'm fully self-aware every time. I know I'm messing up socially, but I just can't help it.
Our friend Lou, who we went to this movie with, she was telling me about her personal life. She was like, wait, I'll show you. Wait, how do you get to the... Oh, wait. And she was scrolling through her text to find a picture. And I was like, actually, if you just click the contact name, she was like, no, I can find it. And I was like,
oh, no.
Other side note, I know we have a movie to talk about, but like, I need you to find timestamps of me trying to hold in a cough all throughout the video.
Just make a TikTok of it.
Oh, my God.
Potentially. It's going to be bad. Like, and I'm not even, I swear that I'm not trying to like ham it up. It's taking a lot right now. And yeah, I'm under the weather.
I can't believe you're here without any water.
He's got his water right there. I can't believe
I forgot it was here until you mentioned it, but it is here.
I had an old fashioned I was working on and I finished it. Now I'm sad.
You make yourself a new fashion.
No, then we'd have to stop recording.
You can't have your little drink. Bryce doesn't have his little sippy cup full of alcohol. Brett,
a little sippy cup.
I'm gonna get you a sippy cup. Bryce's alcohol. He's got to have something like that. Brett's coming with me to DC tomorrow to see one of my favorite artists, and I don't know how he's gonna do it. The end.
He'll figure it out.
It was really bad in a packed theater trying to hold it in for
you did a
an
great
hour
job.
And 40.
You did
Tried
a great
so
job.
Hard. It was pretty uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. But
I let out a soul-wrenching sneeze at one point in the middle of the theater.
I didn't even remember.
I remember thinking like, this fucker. I'm trying so hard to hold in my bodily functions. This guy is blowing air out of his nose like it's nobody's business. Like, he's going out of style.
I got the dad sneeze going. I just be screaming.
He does. He screams top of his lungs. Spoilers.
I wanted to start the spoiler conversation with talking about the structure of this movie, but we talked about it a lot. But Brett, you seem to have a little bit more to say about it. I mean, I can sort of start this conversation off with like this. The structure of this movie is sort of like 3-tiered. So you have Bryan Cranston. He's the first person you see in this movie. He acts as sort of the narrator, where he's talking directly to you, the audience, sort of as this like he is the host of a television show or maybe a documentary. And so he's in black and white, and what he is showing is in black and white, which is the play, the stage production of Asteroid City. And he says right off the bat, like, this is not real. This is a play. So we have the play going on. We have Bryan Cranston's monologues going on, sort of describing what's going on in the play. But then the bulk of the movie, and what I enjoy the most, is fully in color the play. What the stage actors are doing is essentially being turned into a movie. Mm-hmm. And that's when it is at its most conventional, but also maybe it's easiest to follow, that like lowest level. Brett, I don't know if you want to direct the conversation. Maybe I'm even wrong that you had more to say about it. I can't even remember.
Colleen has lots to say about
it.
Please.
I want to know what Colleen has to say first. I already talked about it for a while. So.
Well, what I was going to elaborate on is just that sense of like, oh, what did I, like, I want to elaborate on what I meant by design. It was leading you through these different things. Mm-hmm. I meant that from a purely technical aspect. So from a technical aspect, when we're in the world of the play, when we're in the world of like what we're seeing in full color, it's all widescreen. And so we're seeing, like, I thought a just comparison was like, oh, what is he trying to get us to understand about the real world versus like a play world? He lent a lot more room to the play. He lent a lot more room to the act itself than he did to the real life. We had I don't know what you would call that when it's not widescreen.
Their aspect ratio changes.
Thank you. Their aspect, but he's right. Like, their aspect ratio changes.
Colleen asks what this is, receives an answer,
I know,
and then makes fun of the answer.
Listen, Brett was doing it in his little tone of like, actually, It's the aspect ratio.
Well, I don't know what you expect.
Brett is a huge Ben Shapiro fan.
All we're here about is to talk our opinions and be important.
That's true. I'm on board for that. So like the aspect ratio changes when we get into the real life documentary, recounting of what's actually happening. And I thought that from like a unconscious thing of what he's trying to get us to see, that is what I meant by like, oh, by design, he's leading us through these different aspects. He's leading us through these different tiers by showing us physically like we're in something different now. My one gripe with that is that, or like the lack of effectiveness with that, is that you're right, and I completely agree that like by drawing so much attention and color to the play itself, when we went to the more personal and archival recounting of like the playwriting itself and the relationship of the playwright to everybody else, it kind of felt like whiplash. It kind of felt like we were right in the middle of a story and now we're in the middle of a different story. And so while the difference was very stark and I could tell that we were in something different now, I felt like I was being ripped out of it as well. Yeah, that's it. The end.
I didn't have any problems with the way that they made this artistic decision.
You seem to follow the line a little bit better than the two of us.
Yeah, well, when you've been doing this for a long time, it's like, some things just come really naturally to you, and, you guys will learn.
Brett's the only one of us that doesn't have ADHD. So.
That's real. No, and honestly, too, like,
I just, when you said that, I realized I've been bouncing in my seat for 30 seconds straight. My bad.
I'm also like, I don't claim to be very good at understanding subtext or, why directorial decisions were made the way that they were. But I enjoyed the way that they showed the movie because even if I didn't understand, even if I didn't personally understand all of the reasonings for all of the decisions being made, I felt like they were intentional and they had reason behind it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I was really confident in that. I feel like I'm going to understand more about that as I watch it more, as I read my little screenplay that I bought.
I'm really excited
in August.
for that.
If anything that I've gathered, it's like a lot of what this movie is talking about, the themes are like great beyond reality, and infinity is a theme that comes up a lot, and it seems like there are these infinite layers and layers and layers and layers to it that are just beyond human comprehension. And you mentioned, Colleen, earlier about like questions that we're meant to ask, and I think probably one of them is just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And the movie talks about, well, I don't know if we'll talk about this later or not, but the movie references multiple times like, oh, it's not clear.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. And so if that is the end of it, like, that's cool with me. That's totally fine by me.
Yeah.
Good.
No. Go ahead.
I think that I totally agree. Ultimately, I love, if there's anything I love from a movie, it's asking, like, what the hell's the point? And from this movie, I really do think a lot of it is life is pretty random. We don't know what's going to happen. The world is huge. The universe is even bigger.
Yeah.
It's impossible to control what will happen tomorrow, what will happen the next day. People come in and out of our lives. But we are here right now. We are in this moment. Let's make the most of it. And that is essentially like my personal philosophy to a T. Like, that's literally the philosophy with which I try to live my life every day. And so that's sort of why I feel like it has the potential to be a movie that really, really connects with me. Brett totally killed me.
Oh my god.
I tried so hard.
It's why I feel this movie has the potential to really, really connect with me if I'm able to, on second watch, figure out this framework a little bit more.
Yes.
And where I'm at right now, one of the few examples of like the framework actually serving a purpose that I'm able to point to is for example, with Jason Schwartzman's character putting his hand on the stove.
Yes.
The first time, this is a pivotal thing that happens in this story, and it's mentioned 3 times throughout the story. Firstly, before it even happens, the actor in the black and white, like
recounting
stage 2 level of this story, is trying to ask the writer of the play, who's played by Edward Norton, why does he do this? Like, why? And that question is asked every single time this is brought up. So he asks why there the first time, and then when it actually happens, Jason Schwartzman is like, why did I just do that?
Yeah.
And then again, when it's mentioned after the fact, they're like, I don't know why I did that. And I feel like the answer ultimately is we don't always know why we do things. Like sometimes we just act in the moment and we don't always have a logical explanation. And I think that it's hard to reach that conclusion with the one layer. If it were just him in that moment being like, why'd I do that? It would feel out of character. It would feel out of place in the story. But getting the greater context of a third party being like, yeah, why did he do that? I think that adds a lot to the greater question at hand that Wes Anderson is asking. But unfortunately, I feel like that's, at least from my first watch, the only example that I can point to where I really feel like I benefited from having the story told in this way. I don't know if you two agree, and again, I can't emphasize this enough. I feel like my opinion likely will change on a second watch.
Well, you had mentioned the time that you had spent in the various settings of the movie, or like the layers of storytelling that we're referring to, and that you often found yourself just wanting to be back in Asteroid City and wanting to be back with those specific caricatures of actors. And I agree that those were probably some of the most enjoyable parts.
Yeah.
They had such incredibly likable characters, and they were often the funniest parts. In my experience, I found that the other parts of the movie were really interesting to me, and I did want to be there, even if they weren't like the best or funniest or most enjoyable. With all of the like varying, like I said earlier, caricatures of these people, I feel like if I had spent too much time with them, I would not have enjoyed the time that I spent with them the way that I did. It would have been a little bit oversaturated to me, and like there wouldn't be so many parts that really stuck out. I think it would have been a little bit more of like a mess. But I think the movie, I think it's like an hour and 40, is a fucking tight hour and 40.
It really
runtime.
is.
It feeds through.
Yeah, it does.
And I think it's because there's so many different things to see. There's so many different perspectives on the movie. It's not something that I wanted to get in and out of.
Yeah.
But the way that they told the movie, their methodology made it so that those individual parts to me were very distinct, and they stick out to me, and I feel like I connected with them more because of that.
That's valid.
Yeah, I said that the pace, hearing you say it like that, that's a couple of thoughts that I had. One that I wrote down was that the pace felt much like a train, because it was very like, it wasn't relentless in a bad way, but it just definitely chugged along.
Leave it to the guy with autism to bring up trains.
No. So that was one of my thoughts. And then along that same line, I feel like one thing I was impressed by at the start of the movie, like one thing that was notable is as an actor, I thought it was not to be like as an actor, but like I
Colleen
think
is an actor for those who do not know.
I'm an actor. Presenting the relationships of the actors to the director and the director to like the writer and just like the origin story of where these actors came from in terms of like them all just finding each other in an improv class. I think you're right. I think that did really, really contribute well to the overall sense of like connectiveness that we had in the world of color. I really thought it was impressive that they were able to, even in those like real life moments, maybe I think this is a big Wes Anderson thing too, like portray it as if those moments felt more like watching a stage play than the maybe it was the perspective, but like
No, I think you're right. I mean, the way that those characters are lit with a spotlight.
Yes.
We don't get any of that in the Asteroid City, which is technically the play that we're witnessing.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, and one note that I wrote down was like the widescreen, like real life versus color, TV. Oh my God. What's real life versus what is the play, and how that's presented in those design choices. And I think one scene that sticks out to me in terms of that idea, was the scene where Jason Schwartzman at like the climax of the play, of the climax of Asteroid City, he goes to have a smoke break, and that's where we see our 60 seconds of Margot Robbie, and they're talking about a deleted scene, and it's just actor to actor, but she's like, oh, do you remember the scene that we had together? Like, to me, that scene where they're just talking to each other felt like the true crux of the movie, as opposed to what I think it should have, what it was presenting as, which was when Jason Schwartzman sits down with the director and he's like, what does it all mean? And I loved that scene, but I think that scene lacked the same punch that the scene with Margot Robbie did, where they're just talking about what this play means, and you're allowed to draw your own conclusion from it. That's my thought.
To mention the French Dispatch again one more time, Bryce, I think you mentioned when we watched it that, and I fully agreed with this, that it had a problem where there was like inconsistency. So the first act of the movie was, I don't know if this is accurate to say from your perspective, I felt this way. The first act was like leagues better than the rest of the movie.
Yes.
I did not. So, I mean, the first thing is, what is his name? This happens to me every time.
Adrian Brody.
Nope. Before that even, Owen Wilson. His story is like 30 seconds long, and it doesn't make the final cut of the newspaper. So I guess it's technically the second one, but that's the like Adrian Brody prisoner story. That is genuinely what it could, if it were just a short story on its own, would be one of the best short stories I've ever seen.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's hard for the third and fourth parts to live up to that.
Compare that to this movie, where I felt like, and I'm assuming you'll agree, I felt like it was so incredibly consistent all the way through, and the various ways that they tell the story is intertwined through the story in a way that ties it all together very well.
Yes.
As compared to the French Dispatch, which to me is very disjointed.
It is disjointed. You're right.
I found the framework in the French Dispatch much simpler.
Yes.
And therefore a little bit, I think I liked that framework more, at least I've only seen each of those movies once. I found that a little bit better, but in terms of the actual content of the story and how successfully that is being portrayed, I think this is like leagues ahead of the French Dispatch.
Yeah.
I have said all that I need to say regarding. I give the blessing to move on.
Oh, in terms of the structure, or in terms of the movie?
Anything. Well, Bryce is the host.
Yeah.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
I'm going to leave in every one of these coughing fits
God,
because it's hilarious.
I hope so. I think it's sucks.
Do we want to get into a category? Colleen, you look like you might have somewhere to go.
I have so many thoughts, and I don't know whether can I talk about one thing of note.
Please.
What category were you talking? What category?
We could do any category.
Okay. Well, one thing that I thought was significant, and I don't know how to transition into this, but one thing I want to comment on was the role of children versus adults and how that's portrayed in not only Asteroid City. There's not any children in the other two layers in the black and white layers. Yes. But in the
oh, that's a great point. Even the children in the story don't have like actors that we're seeing for them,
except for Brainiac. He's on the train with Scarlett Johansson, and she's like, "You're the understudy," and he's like, "I'm the understudy." She's like, "Not anymore, baby." And
Woodrow, played by Jake Ryan, who
Yeah.
I feel, on top of just being entertaining in this movie, looks exactly like Jason Schwartzman.
Yes,
did.
they did a great job with that.
when Jason Schwartzman was his age in Rushmore, so that's pretty cool.
Jason Schwartzman was his age in Rushmore?
Yeah, I mean, Rushmore was 98.
Josh, I gotta watch
I might be
Rushmore
wrong
now.
about that.
Sorry, man.
It's definitely,
I
it's not
haven't.
98. I'm lying. It's
I-
In that case,
early 2000s.
we will definitely watch it together. I'm excited.
Oh, it is 98. I was right the first time.
I saw
Rushmore's an awesome movie.
when I got COVID, Josh had given me Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou and Rushmore, and I chose Life Aquatic. And he was like, "Why didn't you watch Rushmore, my favorite movie?" And I was like, "You don't know."
They're
Just
both
shut up. I want to talk about the role of children versus adults.
Please.
In the play version. What I thought was, I don't know what to take from it. I don't know what to take from the whole presentation of like the children are geniuses and the adults are idiots. Because they were geniuses and they weren't smug about it, and I really liked that. It seemed like these were just like kids who were enjoying their own brilliance, and I really, really liked that presentation. But I didn't know how I felt about like the main scientist being like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Sorry. It felt a little like see how much smarter these kids are. See how much smarter the future is going to be from us. And I don't know if that's the main takeaway. So that's what I wanted to
Did you notice a little bit of sexual tension in that one scene?
Yes.
Where she's like,
maybe be my protege.
You could be my protege. It would not be the first time that Wes Anderson has shown a young male character in love with a much older female character.
Yes, Ice Queen.
Which is maybe a thing that I can relate to.
I will be your protege.
That's the whole point of Rushmore.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Colleen, I think I totally agree. I don't know if I have any thoughts about like what the significance of that is, other than just like, I mean, it's clear with a film like what's the camping movie?
Oh, Moonrise Kingdom.
Moonrise Kingdom. I know the name of that movie. It's just on the moment. Our listeners know at this point, I feel, that I just cannot remember names when it comes time to. It's clear he views children as real people that are just as complex as adults, and have the capacity to be just as intelligent.
Yes.
So it might just be another example of that.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I'm leaning at this point.
Yeah. Okay. I think that, yeah. I'll be curious to see if I have any other thoughts as far as how it relates to the plot as a whole, in any future rewatches. I hope that wasn't a waste of time.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the emotional weightlifting from the story is being done by adults, specifically Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot for me to relate to within the context of the story from these two kids. I mean, because I was sort of like a neurotic, not to say that I wasn't like charismatic, because these kids are pretty freaking dorky. They reminded me, Brett, of our STEM campers when we were counselors of STEM camp. Brett and I used to counsel at a camp together, and STEM camp was all of our campers were just the kids in this movie.
It was iconic.
I loved those kids.
They were incredible.
Like universally, they were just the best kids to have
Yes.
every single year. But they were weird and they weren't very sociable or charismatic. But we loved them.
Oh, that's crazy. It sounds like you love autistic people, but you find them to be weird and not sociable.
Worth noting, Wes Anderson has like never put a kid in one of his movies that was not clearly just autistic. Maybe Wes is saying something about his own childhood and growing up neurodivergent, but yeah, I find even if that is not an experience that you've had, sort of the isolation and the feelings of loneliness that all of the kids in Wes Anderson's movies experience.
Damn.
I think anyone, no matter how popular you were when you were 12 or 13 years old, is something that you can relate to, feeling that way. As sort of like I'm interested in these things, or there's this particular thing about me that separates me from everyone else. And so it's really cool. And again, if we're talking about the ultimate point of this movie being there's a lot going on, life is unpredictable, but here in this moment, let's enjoy it. These kids have found each other in this moment.
Goddamn.
Where literally, like, an alien has touched Earth. Life could not be crazier. They're being quarantined in the middle of the desert in Arizona, but they have found people that are like themselves, and that is really all that matters to them, is just like, we have found people that we like to be around, which it's clear these kids, we mostly get this perspective from Jason Schwartzman's son, but it's clear they have not really had that before, even with their parents, because like he's clearly smarter than his dad.
I know.
So it's like, it's cool that they get to relate to someone in that way.
Well, even that, I think, kind of, if not answers the question, like gives us an answer of like the role of these adults being idiots, more or less, or like out of touch. I will say that in terms of their parents, especially. The role of their parents being somewhat out of touch, I feel like really drives that point home, drives that point of isolation home, because it's that sense that you feel when you're a kid of like, do I trust this person? I know I should, but like, is it right to, or do I want to rely on my own intuition and that building of intuition and where that comes from? Isolation, you know, in terms of like where you develop your own sense of self. Yeah, but that sense of community, I think, is really significant.
Well, and also compare that idyllic, childlike sense of experience against the adults in their, you know, the way that they are in the movie, which, you know, they're all much more touched by the world.
Yeah.
And, and are, you know, melancholy or narcissistic.
Yeah.
Or in Steve Carell's case, he's just a dumb, lovable idiot.
He's so dumb.
I understand perfectly.
Yeah, with the exception of Steve Carell, basically, like all these negative ways that, you know, you can become as an older adult. I think that is a good representation of real life. I liked that.
Yeah, and like, I mean, if the children's struggle is finding connection because of just their slight abnormalities, you kind of see the same thing with the connection that Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson have. Like, they are both traumatized in their own way. Like, Jason Schwartzman's wife has just died, and he's clearly not over it. And Scarlett Johansson mentions all of the trauma and things that are in her past. Like, it's clear that she is not well either, and the two of them find connection in that, just in the same way that the kids find connection in being a little bit abnormal. And Brett is really, bro, just cough. You're turning purple.
Nope.
Who's sick? You have get it out.
Wes in this moment, I feel is really pointing to like how no matter what, no matter how wild the world gets, we always have the chance to find human connection with people, which I like a lot.
I like.
Brett, you mentioned Steve Carell. I feel like that's a good segue to Bryce's Fun Fact Corner, because I've got a fun little Steve Carell fun fact here. Before I get into mine, do either of you have any fun facts? There's not a whole lot. I often get a lot of these from like YouTube videos interviewing the directors and that sort of thing, but
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of that content out yet, and I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of it yet.
I got
so
nothing.
I don't have a ton.
My fun fact was that this should have been obvious. Me and Brett just watched one of my favorite movies, Gattaca, for my birthday, that has Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Wow.
That is the movie where they met. Believe it or not. I did not know that.
And their offspring.
God, Maya Hawke is in that. I didn't put together that Ethan Hawke is her dad.
Yes.
I knew that Uma Thurman was her mother because, like, I feel like
exactly
they
the same.
look exactly the same, but she has a lot of Ethan Hawke in her face as well. But like,
It's funny because they are not the ones that share a name.
I know,
You know?
I
It's
know.
not Maya Thurman.
No, I know, but like, oh my God. So I love Maya Hawke. She's so good, and she's up and coming, and she's doing the deed. That's all.
She's doing the deed.
As in the acting
Probably in
deed.
her personal life sometimes. But who are we to say?
Good for her.
No, good for her. That's all. I just learned that today.
No, that's fun.
My fun fact was I liked the movie.
And
I think
liked
that's
the movie.
pretty fun.
My fun fact is that I bought the screenplay on pre-order. It's not going to get here till August.
My Steve Carell fun fact is that character was actually supposed to be Bill Murray initially, who's in literally every single Wes Anderson movie.
Got COVID.
But Bill Murray got COVID
Wow.
during the filming of this, and he couldn't do
Damn.
it. So Steve Carell filled in last minute. And frankly, I mean, I guess Bill Murray probably would have played this character a little bit differently, but I absolutely loved Steve Carell in this movie.
He's so good.
It reminded me a lot of his performance in 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes.
In terms of like, this character just feels so innocent and just untouched by all of the darkness that the world has to offer.
Yes.
He's just kind of there. And in this movie,
my God.
he's just there. He's just manning his motel.
Oh, I got it from the daiquiri machine.
I don't actually know how to make this.
Oh, it's all the machine.
It's all the machine.
Steve Carell also has a way of like
Disarming.
I
That's
wasn't
not
gonna say disarming, but
Speak for Brett. He needs it.
I love speaking for
he has a way of overtaking his
Yes.
cast members.
Mm.
And I actually didn't think that he did that in the movie. I thought that the performance was a lot more subtle, but still just like equally enjoyable. And I love that he went that route with it because there's so much limelight to share. And yeah, it wasn't like, oh my God, it's Steve Carell. Oh, he's Steve Carelling right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he I love the way that he did it.
Ironically, I think he gets pigeonholed pretty hard just because of his role in The Office
Yes.
as a comedic actor. But like, he truly is a very talented dramatic actor, and he can convey
good.
empathy in a way that not a lot of actors can do.
Yes.
And I don't think he gets the opportunity to do that. I would love to see him in another Wes Anderson movie. I think a lot of the roles that I would like to see him in, Owen Wilson would probably get that look for Wes
true.
Anderson.
Mm.
What was he doing for this movie? I don't
Is
know
he
why
in this
wasn't
movie?
there.
No, Owen Wilson.
This is truly one of the only movies that Owen Wilson is not in. There's a chance he's like in the background just cause, but
No, but he is actually. I wasn't asking that like, oh, I saw a screen credit and he wasn't there.
he's not even in
No,
the credits.
he's not in the credits. I was just. It just seems like.
what was he doing at the time?
It just feels like he would
Interesting.
be in this movie.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be back, but yeah, just to finish my point, like I think Steve Carell is very talented,
Yes.
and it's a shame as a stretch because I do love him being a comedic actor as well.
Yes.
He's just freaking brilliant at being a comedic actor, but I would like to see him more in the mainstay as a dramatic actor as well. But he's very funny in this movie.
Him in The Big Short was like incredible. That guy can act circles. around
Beautiful
everybody.
boy. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, he can do it.
Yeah, he can do it. Another fun fact, Wes Anderson has said, I know there haven't been a lot of interviews, he said this wouldn't have happened without the quarantine that we all went through.
Mhm.
Like that was a big part of like the birth of the screenplay, which definitely crossed my mind as we were watching it. Not because I read that fact beforehand, but I was like, we've lived through a quarantine. We
Yeah.
know what this feels like. And just that sense of stasis of like, oh, everybody in this theater knows what that feels like. So even though that crossed my mind. It didn't feel like it was like I feel like that wasn't the like driving force of it.
Yes.
The quarantine.
Yep.
That's not what it felt like at all. So I appreciated that that's what it was born out of, but I appreciate that we got this piece of art, you know, that had nothing. Oh, like that was a very small part of it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you're thinking about what the point that he is trying to make is, it's like when people are put into this scenario where they're stuck together, like what beauty can we get out of that scenario? My other fun fact here is maybe one of my favorite fun facts that I've shared for a movie.
Ooh.
I mentioned Wes Anderson, on top of being a really talented and creative director, is also just like a good guy. So Scarlett Johansson has a nude scene in this movie, which is rare. I don't think she's been nude in any movie other than Under the Skin, which was like a decade ago at this point. It's like 2012 or 2013.
Damn.
He had written this scene into the script, and apparently Scarlett Johansson had no problem doing this nude scene, but she had to direct it herself because Wes was uncomfortable being on set for it.
God.
He was too embarrassed to be on set while Scarlett Johansson was fully in the nude, so she had to direct the scene herself.
I appreciate that. I wish that were my experience. The end. In terms of never mind. Artistic nudity. I wish that were my experience with artistic nudity.
You ever been nude in a movie before?
No, for shoots and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
God.
I once had to make out in front of a teacher to get ready for a play.
You need to tell that story.
You need to tell that story sometime.
I was in Beauty and the Beast. There were 2 kisses, one between my character and the female lead, one between the male lead and the female lead. And we were being very awkward about kissing on stage in front of everyone. So to get rid of all the awkwardness, the assistant director, who was a teacher of the show, was just like, you two need to make out. And he did at least turn his back, but he made us make out just like in a spare room of the high school.
So
it's weird, but it worked.
Wildly out of line.
It worked though.
In a high school, that's a fucking crazy thing to
do. And Bryce did not tell his high school girlfriend. Is that right?
No, that's not true.
You did.
She was definitely mad, but I did tell her.
Oh, okay, that's good. Sorry, I misremembered. That was my bad. I was so excited for the scandal.
Well, if anything, it was a scandal just because she was very mad that I was even kissing anyone in this play.
It's a scandal because this guy's a pedophile.
This guy's a pedophile. Well, I mean, he turned his back, Brett.
Yeah, he just loved being in the same room. He couldn't get enough of it.
Not gonna say any names. Any other fun facts before we move on to nitpicks? Wyatt is a pretentious asshole nitpick corner.
Damn, that's what it's called?
I think he came up with that name, actually.
That's
yes,
pretty.
He did.
Oh, I love Wyatt.
Bryce's fun fact corner. Wyatt is a pretentious asshole nitpick corner. And Brett is a cute, special little boy favorite scene.
He's so special. Okay.
He's a little guy.
He's just a little guy. Now, I don't have any more fun facts.
I'm curious if you even have any nitpicks for this movie. I really struggled to even come up with one.
I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't write anything for any of the categories. I had a hard time. I was just busy thinking.
That's real.
And that's going to be real weird whenever we get to
this movie
shout-outs.
is so experiential
yes.
in terms of like you're kind of asked to just be there and sit there and not think a whole lot. I think it's kind of just about like what you feel in the moment.
I think the closest thing I have to a nitpick contributed to the overall experience, which is what we're saying. It's experiential. I think this is a hot take. Scarlett Johansson does not hold a candle to Margot Robbie in terms of energy.
Oh, interesting.
And I know that might be a bad take. I feel like they're much different energies, and that might just be a Colleen preference. But like to me, the power that Margot Robbie is able to like convey, and I feel like you guys saw this in Babylon. Like the way that she's just able to
greatest movie of all time.
Yeah, I bet. I've seen clips from it. Sorry, I don't mean to be like I've seen clips from it, but just the energy that she's able to convey so easily and just like light up and just like be there is so impressive. And I think Scarlett Johansson is much different, but I feel like maybe it was by design, but I felt so much more impacted by the 60 seconds that Margot Robbie was on screen as opposed to
ScarJo, yeah. So I think that's totally valid. I think the reason why he did it the way that he did,
it was so effective,
is because he's going for his thing, which is kind of like this understated emotion.
Yes.
Scarlett Johansson has a line in this movie where, in the second or third scene, where she's talking to Jason Schwartzman, which is sort of like it goes throughout this movie. A lot of the scenes are just the two of them talking from across their little bungalows. She mentions, like, you and I are the same. We both are deeply sad.
Yeah.
And don't really let on. Which I'm messing up that quote. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember in the moment really, really that line specifically connecting with me. Because that's sort of like, I mean, I'm already like a pretty monotone guy. Like I can let out some anger. I can let out some happiness every once in a while. But in general, my line is pretty like in the middle. It's pretty monotone.
Yes.
And a lot of that is because either I'm in the process of processing emotions and I don't want to let on until I've actually like arrived at where I want to be with an emotion, or because sometimes it can hurt to let out emotion, so maybe I don't let out any, which is not actually how I behave, but that's sort of like my default. And Wes Anderson puts a lot of characters like this in his movies, but especially in this one, I feel like it's the main thing between the two of them, and it's sort of how the two of them connect.
Yeah. I thought their chemistry as actors was really, really significant.
Which is wild because Jason Schwartzman is a goofy looking motherfucker.
He's such a goofy looking
ScarJo
motherfucker.
Is stunning.
She is stunning. I think my hot take on this is just like she does a lot of acting. She does a lot of, and I saw this in Marriage Story, and I was like, oh my god, she's doing it again. Where like she's delivering a monologue the way a monologue would be read, and Brett noted that. As opposed to Laura Dern, she was like, Laura Dern was delivering a monologue about like the Virgin Mary in the marriage.
You're talking about the Marriage Story.
Yeah, in a Marriage Story. And Brett remarked after it, he was like, I feel like that monologue could have been delivered better. And I was like, no, that's how a lawyer, not to negate Brett, but like, I was like, no, that's.
Suck at talking.
I was like, no, that's how a lawyer would say it. And he was like, I guess you're right. And I was like, I know I'm right. So I feel like I would love to see ScarJo in a stage play because she's very good. And this is why it was good and very, very effective for this movie, because it had that stage play element. She does a lot of acting. So like, I feel like I was very reactive to that as far as like the connection of movies. The end.
Valid. No nitpicks out of Brett.
I gotta get out of here as soon as possible. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It is a Friday night, and Brett's trying to go to sleep at 11.
It's not that. I don't care about getting to sleep. This is such torture for me. I feel like...
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so bad.
I don't know.
Oh, I lost my hat.
That has got $60.
I've got one nitpick, which is quite small. It was frankly kind of difficult to even come up with any because I truly do think this is an exceptional movie. I was a little bit weirded out by the amount that the fourth wall was broken in this movie. Bryan Cranston's narrating the story, and he has his own unique layer, and then the play actors have their own unique layer, and then the story has its own unique layer. And there's one shot in this movie where, within the context of Asteroid City, the full color actual story that's being told, the camera pans over and Bryan Cranston's just there, and they're like, hey, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, my bad. I'm not supposed to be here. Which is funny in the moment, but it never happens again.
I know.
And I'm just a little bit confused. Like, I almost wish that had not been there at all,
Yes.
or had happened more regularly, where that
Yes.
wall is kind of being torn down between the layers of this story. I almost wish they had their own, they were fully isolated,
Yes.
or those walls were just constantly being torn down.
Yeah, I agree.
So that it's more of a nitpick. Brett disagrees, which is
Nah.
why it's a nitpick.
Nah, it would have been annoying. I love the way they did it. It was funny. Good bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're wrong.
You're really hurting over that Laura Dern comment, huh?
I'm gonna cough it in the microphone more,
Oh my god.
and then
All
I'm
right.
gonna make you use it next time.
Let's end with, before we get into our final thoughts, let's do our favorite scenes. Did Ian's have favorite scenes?
I did actually.
Or a least favorite scene if you didn't like this movie?
No, I loved. I feel like this is a sleeper pick, but right before, we don't even talk about this, or like we haven't talked about this at all. The fact that like a major
Oh my God,
plot point
we
of this
haven't
is
talked-
an alien coming to Earth
Yes.
and like just intervening in this this like space cadet camp. Right before that happens for the first time, Jeffrey Wright's character is introduced and has this just hilarious monologue as a speech in front of the audience. And like I'm not even gonna say what he says because like it's not important. I can't do it justice the way that he performs it. It's so funny. Like
It's so funny.
I was losing my mind.
I don't remember which scene are you talking about. I know
The
you
one I
don't
just
want to.
said.
The-
It described.
when
You mean
they're-
no, the one that you were like, I'm not going to say anything about it.
No, I
Yes.
said the one that introduces Jeffrey Wright's character. He has a monologue where he like does the speech introducing the camp.
Oh, well, you said that
yes.
was right before the alien showed up. That
Yeah,
was
is
a
it
whole
not?
like
No, it's
30
not.
minutes. His character's introduced right at the
All
beginning of the
right,
story.
I'm an asshole.
You're
Everybody's
right.
saying
You're
it.
so silly and dumb right now. That's crazy, Brett.
All right.
No, I
that
agree.
was your favorite scene?
That's a funny
Yeah,
scene.
That was I have a couple. One, one of the brilliant kids. Anytime he was like, "Do you dare me? Do you dare? Do you dare me?"
Yes.
My favorite scene, and I was the only one in the theater that laughed out loud at this, and it's because I work with kids, and they just be doing shit like this. He was like, "Do you dare me?" And they're like, "To what?" He's like, "Jump off the roof. It's an experiment." And then they're like, "No," and he does.
He just does it. 'Cause that's not what it's about for him.
Oh my god!
I'm actually glad that you brought that up because I have a real world experience with that.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
You would. Oh my god.
So, at the camp that Bryce previously mentioned, one of my camp boys, he was in like 6th grade, and he had this huge crush on one of the counselors. It was Grace.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Grace is gorgeous. It's not funny. Go ahead.
Really taking the wind out of my sails for a cough break. He had this big crush on Grace, and he asked one of his like bunk mates. He was like, "Hey, do you dare me to ask for her phone number?"
Oh my
And his buddy, he was like, "No."
god.
And then he's like, "I dare myself." And then he did it. Grace was like, "You're a child," and he was like, his buddy was there in the moment. He was like, "He told me to do it."
Classic.
His friend sold him immediately. He was like, "You dared yourself." It was just like that.
That scene is really funny, Colleen, and it speaks really well to a more, I think, emotionally important scene that happens
Yeah.
later on with the same kid where his dad's like really fed up with him. Like, why do you keep asking me to dare you to do things that I don't give a shit about?
Oh my god.
And he just like fully is honest about it. He's like, I feel like if I don't turn this into like a fun dare, nobody's going to pay me any attention at all.
And not even that. He's like, I worry that I won't have cosmic significance.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And it's wild that a child can feel that way, but B, it truly does in
Yes.
terms of like from each of our own perspectives, our own cosmic significance is just the impact that we make around us.
Yeah.
And if this kid never feels seen, he's never going to feel like he's ever had that important significance that I think ultimately all of us need to feel at some point or another to feel like we've had an impact on the world.
Yes.
And this kid is so smart. Like, he's inventing things. He's being honored for these inventions at this thing. But at the end of the day, it's like he wants a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
And he's not always getting that. I think because he's like a weirdo.
I think, the role of attention when it comes to childhood is a newly developing thing when it comes to like the next generation of parenting, because parenting is always evolving and it's such a complicated thing in terms of like what children are meant to expect from us and what we can feasibly provide for them. But attention is like a relatively new thing because our parents, and I don't know if you're, maybe not Brett's parents, because Brett's parents are the best, but like maybe your parents too. Doug's the best as well because I know he's listening. But
my
like,
mom also listens to this.
I'm sorry, I love you, Bryce's mom.
Jenna.
I've never met you. But like, I know the rhetoric that was used for our parents was like, this person just wants it. This child just wants attention. And it was such like a point of contention that children need attention because of how stretched thin parents tend to be. And so where the old paradigm is to blame the child
for wanting attention.
Yes, for needing attention. The new paradigm is like, okay, how can I honor this in a way that is not like, even if it's draining for me, like how can I honor this to make sure the child is not like hurting themselves in order to gain attention. Yeah. Even if you as a parent are not going to be able to feasibly provide everything a child needs, but like you can try. And how can you show the child that like, hey man, I'm here for you and we are doing the best we can and I will pay attention to you. Yeah. How can I make you feel loved?
Someone to tell me that.
Brett and I love attention.
Brett and Bryce love attention.
Here? Why do you think I'm faking this cough?
Yeah, that's it. And then the scene follows up with him being like, they're like, why do you do this? And he's like, I just want cosmic significance. And they're like, okay, dare you to what? He's like, you want me to climb that cactus?
They're like, fuck no.
They're like, no!
I really wanted a scene later on of them like picking pricklies out of him.
Yeah.
God, it was so funny.
I would imagine that was the only instance in this movie where he was not dared to do something and he actually didn't do it. Brett, for your sake, let's get out of here.
Oh God,
sorry.
What are your final thoughts?
We gotta be pushing like 2
About
hours.
an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
Hour and 40.
Final thoughts. I really love this movie. I think it's gonna be hopefully remembered as a good work of Wes Anderson. I think that's especially likely considering it seems to be doing so well already. And so, obviously when more tickets sell, and it's a good quality work, that tends to go into the kind of like workbook of legacy that a director has. So I'm excited to see the path that this movie has. I hope that it becomes like a good streaming movie because I could see that being like a place where it ends up down the line.
This movie certainly doesn't like have to be seen in theaters.
Totally. 100%. I think it'll serve streaming very well. Yeah, I loved it. Good old Wes. I think this is a hitter for him.
I really enjoy this movie now that we've talked about it. And I was really excited, like all the way on the way home. I was like, okay, I know I won't be able to talk to Bryce and Brett about this until they do the podcast. And I was like, I can't wait to talk to you guys about this.
We have a no talking about the movie in the car policy so that it can all be fresh.
And I was really excited to talk to them about it. And Bryce was like, do you just want to be on the podcast? And I was like, yes. And that's a huge honor.
In that voice.
Isn't that nice? What in that voice?
In that voice, sorry.
He was not doing a British accent.
I just had my necklace in my mouth because I can't sit still.
I gotta interrupt you real quick. So when I was editing our good friends Jen and Ashley's podcast at some point, very early on in them doing it, shout out the Let's Debrief podcast. Jenna had a like an iced coffee that while she was talking, she was swishing it around in front of the microphone, and I remember editing it being like it was taking longer than I expected. I was happy to do it, but that made me like almost lose my mind. I was so frustrated trying to get that out of the edit, and I was like, "What are you doing?" I think. And you only saw this if you were watching it on YouTube, but Bryce putting pearls in his mouth and then trying to talk into the microphone, and that's like
don't worry about
like
it.
20 times worse.
Don't worry about it.
I'm like my fidget right now is just like Brett and I got manicures, and I'm just pressing down on my nails. We got them for my birthday. Final thoughts.
You should grab my fidget thing there up there. It's real good. You can, yeah, it's nice.
Nice.
Huge.
Do your talking while you play with that.
Yeah, me and Bryce handshake over needing to move constantly. I loved this. I loved this movie. I loved getting to talk about it and talk about like the implications and think about why Wes did the things that he did, why the characters did what they did, and really develop relationships towards them. It was great.
Yeah,
Oh, and this aesthetic.
Brett.
What?
I just said excuse you. This movie looks like a Wes Anderson movie. It feels like a Wes Anderson movie. If you've liked his movies in the past, you will absolutely like this movie. In terms of my own experience with it, I had some issues with the framework. Those issues might go away on a second watch, but on first watch, I loved the experience here. Great performances all across the board. And I really, really connect with the message of like, hey, life is probably meaningless and we're never going to have answers for everything. But at the end of the day, you're just here. You're in the moment that you're in and you're with the people that you're with. So make the most of it. Make connections that last. Have a positive impact on those people. Be a good person. And do your best to just love everyone. And like that's kind of what this podcast is all about to some extent. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think while I do have some issues with how that message is like being conveyed, the overall experience here is really, really enjoyable. This is one of the better movies of the year so far from one of the best directors that is working right now. So whether you have much experience with him or not, Wes Anderson, I highly recommend checking this movie out. I mentioned earlier this has the potential to be one of my favorite movies ever. I really hope it can be because, I mean, that's always what I'm in the search for. Right now, it's not close because I don't really like the framework. But
you mentioned that 3 times.
I'm glad to hear that because it's true.
Bryce loves counting.
I really, really want it.
Joke.
I mean, every time I see a movie, I'm like, I hope this is my favorite movie ever.
Yeah. That's so
even with dumb superhero movies like The Flash, I'm like, maybe this will do it for me. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I really like this movie. Highly recommend you check it out. If you've listened to us this far, I'm now looking at the audience. Check us out on YouTube if you're just listening to us. If you've listened to us this far, we really appreciate it. We love you very much. Check us out on Instagram at LassoTheMoonPod, where we post about any time we are uploading a new episode, or sometimes just some personal stuff, usually movie related, but the 3 of us live together, so sometimes you just get some stuff that shows up on there that has nothing to do with it. Follow us there, LassoTheMoonPod. And other than that, thank you very much for listening. We would Lasso the Moon for you. Brett's about to cough. We hope you would do the same for us. We love you. Good night.
I don't want to lose it in the outro. Oh, fuck.
Say good night.
Good night.
Jesus. Get an I love you out before I turn off this recording.